Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another tutorial. In today's video I'll be showing you guys how to draft a sleeveless vest or waistcoat with a pencil skirt pattern. If this sounds good to you and is something you're interested in, then please watch the end of this video. To my returning subscribers, thank you so much for coming back and supporting my channel, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button. Thank you. With that being said, let's get right into this video. So first things first, I have the front bodice pattern right here, and I already went ahead to make some measurements on the paper before I started filming. On the center front line, I came out 1.5 inches for the button allowance. For the neckline, I came out 3.5 by 3.5 for the depth and the width, and then I came out 8 inches for my shoulder line. That's 16 divided by 2. Then from the shoulder line, I came down 10 inches for the bust point, as you can see, and then I came down 17 inches for the waistline from the shoulder line, and then I came down 25 inches from the shoulder to the hip line, as you can see, which is going to serve as the length of this vest or waistcoat. The next thing I did was to transfer half of my shoulder measurement to the bust line, which is 8 inches. So I transferred 8 inches from the shoulder line down to the bust line like so, and then I connected the 2 points together with a straight line, as you can see. Now from that point, I'm just going to come down 1 inch for the shoulder slope, as you can see, and then from that point I'll just connect back to the neckline to form the shoulder slope line, as you can see. To create the armhole, I'm going to be taking the midpoint between the bust line and below the shoulder slope like so. Then I came out by 1 inch. You can come out by 1.5 inches depending on how deep you want the armhole to be. Then for the new shoulder, I came out 3.5 inches for the width of the new shoulder, and I connected it to the armhole. On the bust line, I placed the bust circumference divided by 4. Then I came down by half an inch. Before I placed my bust measurement, I came down by half an inch, as you can see, and then I completed the shape of the armhole. Now what I'm going to do is use marker to further highlight all these lines that I've drawn from the armhole to the shape of the shoulder slope and also the neckline. And I'm also going to be extending the shape of the neckline to the button extension for a smooth transition. So the next thing I did was to come out 4.5 inches from the center front for my dart placement on the waist. Now I came down 1 inch from the bust point. That will be the beginning of the dart, like so. And then on the darts at the waist, I'm going to be coming out half an inch on both sides. I did that, and then on the hip line I came up by 2 inches, which will serve as the end of the dart. And then I'll just go ahead and use pencil and ruler to connect the points together like so. And then I'll also be using marker to highlight the lines for better visibility. After doing that, I also went ahead to draw the side seam of the front bodies, as you can see. Now for the cutout design at the center front, I'm going to be coming out by 2.5 inches like so. I'll just mark 2.5 inches. You can mark higher or lower depending on your preference. Now for the height of the cutout at the center front, I'm going to be coming down 1 inch from the waistline. That is where you want the design to stop. You can make it higher or lower depending on your preference. So I'm just going to connect these 2 points together like so, making sure that I connect all the way to the button extension, and then I'll use my marker for better visibility. So I'm just using freehand to place the buttons on the center front. You can determine the positions of your buttons. Now after doing that, the next thing we want to do is to avoid gaping at the armhole. So I'm going to be creating some kind of a dart at the armhole. So I came down by 5 inches from the shoulder slope, and then from that point I'll just connect straight to the bust point like so. I came down 5 inches. You can come down 6 inches also. So from that point, I'm just going to be taking half an inch on both sides to form my dart at the armhole. We are also going to be converting this dart into a princess seam later. So let's just connect these 2 points together to form our dart, the 1 inch dart we took at the armhole. So the next thing to do is to open up the dart at the armhole and also the one at the waistline, so we'll be able to redraw the shape of the armhole. So I'm just going to be cutting through the armhole like so up until I get to the bust point, and I'll also be cutting through the waistline like so up until I get to the bust point. Then I will close back the armhole dart like so, be using masking tape to hold it in place, thereby opening up the dart at the waistline, as you can see. And now I'll just go ahead and take my armhole curve and redraw the shape of the armhole. As you can see, I'll be using a red marker. So this is going to be the new armhole. You disregard the former line drawn, as you can see. So after doing that, the next thing I'll do is just to go ahead and cut the rest of this pattern. Like I said before, the reason why we placed a dart at the armhole and redrew the shape of the armhole is to reduce gaping. So I'll just go ahead and use marker to complete the side seam and then continue cutting the pattern out. After doing that, I'll just go ahead and use my armhole curve to draw a princess seam line like so at the armhole. And then after doing that, you just be cutting this pattern into two through the line. So I'm just going to label it. I'll be cutting this much later. So when you join by the panels right there, you have your princess seam at the front like so. So now let's move on to the back pattern of this vest. Now every measurement I placed on the front pattern is the same as the back pattern, except for the neckline. I used 3.5 by 1.5 for the width and the depth of the neckline respectively. And at the armhole, I came out by half an inch before I drew the armhole curve after placing the bust measurement. I also went ahead to place the dart, as you can see, and I drew it up to the bust point, and on the hip line I came up by 2 inches before I completed the dart, just like I did for the front bodies. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is just go ahead and use marker to further highlight these lines. So I'm going to be using the marker for the darts, as you can see. Then I'm just going to go ahead and also use marker for the neckline, as you can see, and the shoulder slope. Then I'll move over and highlight the armhole curve like this. And after doing that, I'll just go ahead and complete the side seam just the way I'm doing. So for the back bodies, you can either have a straight dart at the back like this, or you can have a princess seam coming from the armhole, just like we did for the front bodies. So in this case, I'm going to be having a princess seam from the armhole. I don't want to have a straight dart at the back, so I'm just going to come down from the shoulder slope by 5 inches. Now from that 5 inches mark, I'm just going to connect it to the bust point like this. Now after doing that, we are going to be tightening up the armhole. So at that point, I'm just going to come out by half an inch, and then I'll connect it back to the bust point like so. We are going to be having some kind of dart at the armhole in order for us to tighten it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting through this paper like this up until I get to the bust point, and then I'll go over and also cut through the dart at the waistline up until I get to the bust point, but I'm not going to be cutting all the way. Just watch what I'm doing. And after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to be closing back this half inch that I took at the armhole in order for us to tighten up that area. So I'm just going to be using my masking tape to hold it in place. So by doing this, I've transferred the half inch that I took at the armhole to the waist dart, as you can see. Now for the center back, we have to do some type of shaping at the center back. You can leave it like this if you want, but I want to shape it a little, so I'm just going to highlight the center back line. Now on the waistline, I'm going to be coming in by half an inch. I'll just go ahead and mark that. Now from that new point, I'm going to be connecting it straight to the neckline and then straight to the hem line. Just watch what I'm doing. So from that new point, I'll just connect it straight to the neckline at the top and then straight to the hem line like so. So that way we've taken away half an inch from the waistline, so thereby shaping the back of this waistcoat. So I'm using my red marker to redraw the new shape at the center back. We won't be needing that anymore, so that is the new shape we have now. The next thing I'm going to do is to redraw the armhole shape. As you can see, I'm using my red marker so you can be able to differentiate between the two lines. Now to draw the princess seam, I'm going to be coming down again by 5 inches, and then I'll be connecting with my armhole curve using the curved part of the ruler in order for me to draw the princess seam shape, as you can see. So now that we have that, I'll just go ahead and label this pattern center back and then the side back, and after doing that, we'll just go ahead and cut this pattern out. And please don't forget to click on the subscribe button if you've been enjoying this video so far and you are yet to subscribe. Thank you. So the next thing that I'm going to be doing is separating this pattern. So I'll be cutting through the dart, as you can see, so we can have two separate panels for this pattern, for the back bodies pattern. And here it is. So I'll also go ahead and separate the front bodies pattern through the dart by cutting through the dart, as you can see, the same thing that I did for the back bodies. So I'll be separating this pattern into two. Now this is what we have for the front and back. You'll be cutting to 2 pieces each for each panel for both front and back, and you had your sewing allowances where necessary. Now having done that, let's just move to the skirt pattern. So I'm going to be starting with the back pattern for this skirt, and it's going to be a short skirt. Now from the waistline, I came down 18 inches for the length, then I came down 5 inches for the second waist, And then I came down 10 inches for the hip line. Now the second waistline that I measured on the pattern paper is optional. You might not place it there. So now I'm just going to be using marker and ruler to further highlight all these lines. So that is the hip line, the waistline, and the hem line. And I also used 1 inch for the zipper allowance. Remember, this is the back pattern. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to place my waist circumference divided by 4 on the waistline. I'm going to be adding 1 inch for the dart I'm going to be having at the waist. So on the hip line, I'm going to be placing the circumference of the hip divided by 4 right there. And then I'll go ahead and transfer whatever I have on the hip line to the hem line of this skirt. So you just go ahead and do that. Next thing we want to do is to place our waist dart, and before we do that, I went ahead to place 1 inch extra to the waist circumference I placed there, because we are going to be using that 1 inch as our dart intake. So I'm going to be using my nipple to nipple measurement to place the dart, which is 4.5 inches. So I went ahead to mark that. I'm also going to be using 5 inches as the length of this dart. Then after doing that, I'm just going to be connecting it to the waistline like so, and then I'll be taking half an inch on both sides for this dart and then connecting it back to the length of the dart like so. I'll first use my pencil to connect it, then I'll go ahead and also use my marker to highlight the lines. The next thing to do is just to connect the side seam. So I'm just going to be connecting from the waist to the hip, and then from the hip to the hemline. I will use my pencil first, and then I'll go ahead and use marker just like this. And now I'll just go ahead and cut this pattern out. So to draft the front pattern is quite simple. The only difference is that the front pattern is not going to be having the zipper allowance, and the length of the dart for the front pattern is going to be 3 inches, whereas the back pattern was 5 inches. So that is the only difference between the two patterns. So you can see I'm just comparing. So I'll just go ahead and impute my waist circumference divided by 4, hip divided by 4, and then I'll transfer it to the hem line just like I did for the back pattern. And then I'll just impute my dart of 3 inches for the length, and then I'll connect the darts together with pencil at first, and then I'll go ahead and come out half an inch on both sides, and then I'll just connect these darts. Then I'll also go ahead and use marker for better visibility, just like this. And then I'll just connect the side seam the same way I did for the back pattern. Then I'll go ahead and use marker for better visibility. And remember that the front pattern is going to be on fold, so you'll be having just one piece for the front. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut this pattern out. And these are the patterns for the skirts for both front and back. For the back, you can see the zipper allowance, and you'll be having 2 pieces for that, while the front pattern is just going to be 1 piece because you'll be cutting that on fold. And you can see the difference in length with the dart at the back and also the one at the front. So that is the difference between the two. Also, this pattern does not have a waistband because I'm going to be sewing this as a bandless skirt. So you just transfer this to fabric after adding your sewing allowances where necessary, and then you cut your corresponding linings as well. And on that note, guys, we've come to the end of today's video. If you found my video helpful, please give me a giant thumbs up, share my video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss my latest uploads. So till I see you in my next one, guys. Bye.